Well, heads up for anyone with a WestJet flight booked in the next few days. The airline could be facing a strike by its mechanics as early as Friday. The union that represents the airline's mechanics has issued a strike notice last week. WestJet cancelled dozens of flights after the union issued a strike notice then. That strike was called off and contract talks resumed. So far, no flights have been cancelled, but that could happen as passengers head into a busy travel weekend. Well, let's bring in Ian Lee, Associate Professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Ian, what are the sticking points for WestJet mechanics here?
Money, because of this inflationary world that we're in. And there's a big, wide gap between what the union is asking for and what the management of WestJet are offering. So it's a classic issue of, it's a bread and butter issue. And the mechanics want more, and WestJet being, and I'm not here to defend either side, but WestJet being in a very competitive environment, are holding the line, and they're only offering a modest increase. And so that's the sticking point.
So as we mentioned, the mechanics were set to strike last week. They then called off that strike. Just how concerned should we be that a strike will actually go ahead this week?
I think it's very real. The possibility is very real. And, in some parts of the world, like Europe, where there's many different modes of transportation, a very deep, mature train system because of high densities and buses and so forth, it's not so critical. Canada is a very small country, only 40 million people, stretched over the second largest geography in the world. And so what that means in plain English is that we are much more dependent on airlines in Canada because the distances are so vast. And so it's not, just another mode of transportation. I have argued, and I think others have argued, that airlines specifically are providing an essential service in Canada because of this vast distance of roughly 8,500 kilometers from one end of the country to the other.
Yeah, you touched on the reliance that Canadians have on airlines, and I suppose it's heading into a very, very busy period as well. We've got school holidays coming up, it's summer. If they do strike, just how much disruption could this cause for passengers?
Oh, I think it's going to be massive, especially in the summertime. It wouldn't be, it's very interesting looking at the data, the trend data of usage. As you can guess, it is at its peak in the summertime. People want to get out. It's finally the summer has arrived. It's a wonderful time to travel. People travel in the summertime. And so it's going to be very disruptive. I just want to get this point across because I did a paper on back to work legislation a few years ago using statistics by the from the House of Commons. And in the last, from 1950 until 2015, Parliament legislated striking workers back to work 38 times. That's the National Parliament of Canada. 36 of the 38 times were striking workers in the transportation sector. Airlines, airports, ports, Port of Montreal, Canadian National Railroad, Canadian Pacific Railroad. What Parliament was doing was expressing its will, its view that we will not allow disruptions to the transportation sector because it is so, Canadians and industry are so dependent on the transportation sector. So I would not be shocked if this does go to strike and a strike unfolds, that I would not be shocked to see back to work legislation introduced. Parliament could be recalled very quickly to legislate them back to work.
In theory, could the government intervene before there is a strike to stop that disruption in the first place?
Yes, the Minister of Labour has quite a few tools in his toolbox. He can impose a settlement on them whereby they have to go to binding arbitration. He can use the power of the bully pulpit, as it's called, where he urges them, you get back into the negotiating table or else draconian things are going to happen. So the government does have a lot of authority. I mean, as I said, it legislated striking workers back 38 times. So it certainly does have that stick. That's the ultimate stick. That's the one that's least preferred by governments. They would rather it be negotiated at the negotiating table, but they do have that in their pocket. The Minister of Labour does have that discretion to go to the cabinet and say, look, it's time to legislate them back to work. Let's recall Parliament and introduce a bill and get it through Parliament very quickly.
All right, Ian, we have to leave it there, but no doubt there'll be many, many people watching to see what happens here over the next few days. Ian Lee, Associate Professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University.